the United States government, that is the Biden's administration, has just activated an act that allows it to intervene across the world. This act is called the Global Fragility Act, and this act gives the United States government the authority to intervene in Haiti, Libya, Mozambique, Papua Guinea, and West African countries including Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea, and Togo. This Global Fragility Act was signed into law by the former president of the United States, that is Donald Trump, in 2019, and since then it had not been activated. Now, this Global Fragility Act gives the United States government the mandate to intervene in these countries, to intervene in peacemaking in these countries. Specifically, it requires the US government to develop a strategy for preventing the drivers of violent conflict and extremism, and to test a more coordinated, cost-effective, and sustained US approach in hotspots around the world. Now, according to this statement, the United States government has just given itself the authority to intervene in peacemaking in these countries. What is more important to me is the intervention that the United States has declared in Africa. In Africa, the United States has specified its authority to intervene in Libya, Mozambique, New Guinea, in Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea, and Togo. And according to what they are saying is that this intervention is based in a 10-year stabilization plan. And in this stabilization plan, the United States seeks to counter the influence of China and Russia, to be specific, in Africa. I see this Global Fragility Act not as an act that seeks to create peace, to restore peace in Africa or in these other countries, but I see it as a plan to counter the influence of China and Russia in Africa. That means that the United States is bringing its war with the likes of China and Russia into these warring nations. The United States is trying to somehow fuel war rather than restoring peace. It is relying on this Global Fragility Act to some extent express its hidden agenda in Africa. On the outside, the United States government is saying that it is coming to help countries such as those in West Africa to attain peace, to restore peace in these countries, and to fight extremism, terrorism. But in my view, if you read this Global Fragility Act in details, you will find that United States' main intention in Africa and these other countries is to counter the influence of China and Russia. If this act is implemented, the Congress currently has authorized up to 200 million US dollars a year and appropriated around 135 million US dollars for financial year 2023 for a prevention and stabilization fund, which will be divided up and made available to the relevant field missions in those various countries. Now, I want to tell African countries that the United States is bringing its war to Africa, and the United States is bringing its war with Russia and China to Africa. The United States is hiding behind the Global Fragility Act that gives it mandate to intervene in these countries in the name of restoring peace, to fight the likes of Russia and China. I want to urge African countries, and I want to urge African governments, and specifically the likes of Libya and West African countries, that allowing the United States to implement this Global Fragility Act in their boundaries is like inviting war, inviting an endless war, bringing war to their doorsteps. Remember, the United States and other NATO members destroyed Libya. The same Libya, they have established an act that gives them the authority to go back to Libya and destroy it further. The Global Fragility Act also gives the US mandate to come to West Africa and destroy the security situations in the likes of Cote d'Ivoire, the likes of Ghana. I think these African countries, because what the United States government is saying in their statement is that they consulted these governments, they consulted these countries. In fact, they are saying that the Global Fragility Act mandates 10-year plans to be implemented across the partner countries. Last month, following consultations with national and local leaders and civil society groups, the State Department released the long-awaited plans. Do not allow the United States to implement the Global Fragility Act in your countries. I want to urge the West African countries, do not allow the United States to implement the Global Fragility Act within your boundaries. The United States is interested in the resources within these countries. The United States is not interested in restoring peace. The United States is interested in countering the influence of China and Russia in these countries. And that is why I argued in one of our discussions that the United States is bringing its Cold War with Russia and China to Africa. The United States is not interested in the growth of Africa. It is not interested in peace in Africa. In fact, the United States will be very happy when Africans fight. It will be very happy when African nations are divided. It will be very, very happy when African nations are able to give up their resources. And that is what the Global Fragility Act entails. Allowing the United States access to African resources. Allowing the United States access to African countries to destabilize them. And then after destabilizing them, coming with security forces and saying that they are restoring peace in the name of extracting resources. The United States should not bring its war with China and Russia to Africa. The Global Fragility Act is allowing this war to come to Africa. And if individual African governments of Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea, and Togo, and Libya, Mozambique, allow the United States to apply the Global Fragility Act in their boundaries, then you will regret. If you really love Africa, and if you really love your citizens, and if you really love the resources in your countries, then do not allow the United States to apply the Global Fragility Act within your boundaries.